Hello and welcome into episode 94 of the Stomp the Bus Show. I'm your host, Mark Harris, alongside Colton Dodgson, whose camera isn't working, which is totally fine. But wow, I mean, what a performance from ASU. There's really no other way to get into this. An absolutely dominant beatdown of Wyoming, 48-7 win. And after watching that game, I just have completely new thoughts about this team. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, real quick, I would kind of equate, just to put this into perspective for the listeners, I would kind of equate Wyoming's performance in that game to your performance in that intro. So just to kind of let
Yeah.
everybody know just how brutal it was, now you know. So I mean, you've built up enough equity in however long you've done this. So
Yeah, totally.
you're due for one poor intro. It's okay.
Well, you played the role of Zyrus Fiasau, picking that ball off, making fun of my
Yeah, there
mistake.
you go. Way to take the analogy and run with it.
That's right. Just like Zyrus Fiasau did with the ball.
There you go.
What a play!
But
I
yeah,
mean, honest, like
yeah. I mean, from the jump, I did have some skin in the game across over the course of the day. Right, I had my bets just like everybody did. And unfortunately, I had the under in that ASU game. I
can't even
think,
blame you.
yeah, I think that most people thought that game would be a little more tightly contested. Historically, ASU unders in week one have performed pretty well. And unfortunately, realistically, that bet died as Zyrus Fiasu picked off that ball. 10 seconds in, touchdown. That's not going to get it done. So, um, anyway, from a non-betting perspective, it was. See, and that's why I didn't want to gamble on the game because I want to say it was fun to watch, but the entire time, a part of me was dying every time they scored.
Well,
So, I mean,
it was that last touchdown by Wyoming that really did it in, right? Like that
no,
was.
it was the
Oh,
one ASU the one that was ruled a lateral that ASU picked up
oh,
and ran back because I had under 47 and a half.
oh! So you got it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that last pick, and then of course the score held until 2 seconds left. It wasn't as brutal as my U of A beat when I live bet 22 and a half and they
Oh
went for
my
two in a 20-point game and I lost by the hook. But it was still pretty brutal, nonetheless. But I digress. My gambling misfortunes isn't why people listen to this show. I mean, if I'm gonna remove my business endeavors from the equation, I would say as a fan, it was really cool to see, especially when the last couple of years have conditioned you for letdowns. I think the common theme across our conversation last week was we think Dillingham is laying the foundation for something special here, and I don't know if there was a better way for him to prove that, right? I
No.
don't I don't think there was I don't think this team could have done anything more to make us believe that Dillingham is going to be the guy. Um, I mean, they made Wyoming look like an FCS cupcake
Yeah.
schedule game. You know what I'm saying? Like that's a Mountain West school, um, and one obviously with a new coach, one that went 8-4 last year, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. So
Had
this
17
wasn't
returning starters, I believe. Like,
right. This wasn't some pushover cupcake team, and they made
no.
it look like they made them look like they were. So
Yeah. Well, and I have a few interesting kind of metrics I saw about this game on Twitter that kind of proves your point that we'll show later in this show. I mean, it just everything just looks so easy for ASU. And we did not like nobody went into the game against Wyoming being like, you know what, ASU is just gonna roll them over, destroy them, a la like Texas. I mean, this was a good corollary. I mean, Texas played Wyoming's biggest rival, Colorado State, and Colorado State and Wyoming are fairly similar programs in the group of five, right? It's not like one's San Jose State and one's Boise State. Like they're fairly middle tier Mountain West teams that, and Texas beat them 52-0, no big deal. No one bats an eye at that. ASU having the same level of performance is it's crazy. And I know that some of it, like let's say Cyrus Fieso just drops the ball on that would be pick six, and maybe Wyoming they get a little bit more uh, in tune early on in the game, but it wouldn't have mattered. It would like even if ASU didn't score the two defensive touchdowns, they it would have been 34-0 after three quarters, and they would have added more points on the fourth. It's
Right.
it. I mean, this one thing that stood out to me. Well, I'll say two things actually. I mean, the linebackers. Holy, we were talking about this defense. The linebackers, Cyrus Fiasau, Keyshawn Elliott, Caleb McCullough made some plays. Kavion Thunderbird, like the redshirt freshman, and I think he's a redshirt freshman, had a sack late in the game, and it was. I mean, Keyshawn Elliott was all over the place. If you're an ASU fan, watch number 44 on defense. He has a nose for the football. He's athletic, good coverage skills, and he showed up. And then the other thing that stood out to me on offense was the screen. Every screen that they ran just was effective. They would pick up like at least 5 yards every single time, and oftentimes a lot more. Obviously, the touchdown to Kyson Brown was incredible,
Yeah.
but
I think a
execution
lot.
so good.
Right. I think a lot of what we talked about was Dillingham finding a guy that could effectively and efficiently run the system, right?
Yeah.
And I thought we saw. Can you still hear me? Sorry, my phone.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. My phone started ringing. I wanted to make sure it didn't cut off my laptop or anything.
That's the worst.
Um, yeah. So I think Sam Levitt ran the offense to perfection. I mean, you saw him climb the pocket and make throws. You saw him improvise when he had
Yeah.
to. You saw him make the right reads across the board. I mean, he threw 8 incomplete passes, right? 258 yards, almost 12 yards per completion, right? 2 touchdowns. Only took 2 sacks.
Yeah.
I think he did exactly what he needed to do, and you saw Kyson Brown out of the backfield make some plays too. But Jordan Tyson 4 for 49, um, and a lot of production. I mean, as you go through
Yep.
just this game and you break it down from a numbers perspective, there wasn't one piece of any of this really that stood out to me as like cause for concern. On the offensive side, they were efficient. They ran for 4.9 yards per carry. Um, you know, through the air, right? 18.4 yards per reception, which is insane.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were killing them on offense. On defense, they gave up what 40 passing yards? Is that what it was? Or
It
78. Sorry, it
says,
was 40 rushing yards. Yeah, 40 rushing yards,
yeah,
72 passing
which is
yards.
even more impressive against Wyoming. 1.3 yards a carry. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
they held them to 118 yards, and I mean I don't know how much of that yardage they picked up on that drive for pride there at the end,
yeah, that
um,
had to over half of it, I imagine.
which skewed the
Yeah.
numbers completely.
Yeah.
But I mean, just sheer domination across the board. Only 4 penalties in this game for
Yes.
30 yards. I mean, that's not a crazy high number. They forced 3 turnovers,
Yep.
um, 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 defensive touchdowns. Right? It was just there's nothing you can look at here and think, oh, they need to clean that up. Just I mean, in a perfect world, maybe cut the penalties down a little bit, but it's
But
game
that's not
one.
even, yeah, that
Like
like, yeah,
I mean, if you're nitpicking, but even then, that's a
right.
solid number for week one. And I mean, last week we talked a ton about the 3 guys who weren't even going to play in this game. One of which was Rayleigh Brown, who's practicing today. So they're about to have
Yep.
even more firepower against Mississippi State. Just, I mean, a perfect foundational win across the board when you're looking at, you know, what is this program building toward? I think this is there could not have been a better first step for season 2.
100%. I'll okay, Colton, you're back.
Yeah. Can you
All right.
hear me?
Okay. I do think there was one somewhat legitimate nit to pick, and it is field goal kicking.
Oh,
Ian
okay. Yeah.
Hershey missed a 38-yarder in the first half of the game. They put in another kid, Carson Kiefer, but whatever. The game was over. I think it's more field goal kicking. This should not be. We should never really go into games being like, oh, we could make a 45-yard field goal. I think sub 40-yard field goals, you should feel decent, but everything else, and by the way, this is a team that with a mobile quarterback, with a bunch of good running backs, they are more well built than others to pick up fourth and shorts, right? So, I'm not like discounting the field goal kicking. That will be something that will have an impact later on in this season. But when you play that well and you show that you are capable of playing that well, the field goal kicking may not be as big of a component in as many games as we think, right? So, uh, anyway, that's just a whole separate thing. But yeah, you talked about Sam Levitt earlier, and 14 of 22 doesn't look amazing, but I mean, everything else looked good. And he missed two deep balls, but they were two deep balls that he put only in the place that his receivers could get them, right? It
Right.
wasn't.
And I mean, that doesn't even factor in that he missed what? I don't know how when he got pulled, but at the very least the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah.
So I mean, you take he did all of that in 3 quarters. He easily was on pace for 350, maybe another passing touchdown. It was
It's
just the perfect debut.
305 total yards in your debut.
Yeah.
And a lot of them came from screen passes, but he still executed well. His first touchdown pass to Mateer in the third quarter, it at first glance, if you're an ASU fan and you haven't seen it, it doesn't look like some outstanding play, but when you watch it again, it shows him step up in the pocket, avoid a little bit of pressure from one of the tackles, and then he finds Mateer on a crossing pattern. But it didn't look like it was Mateer was his first read, right? So it was just him kind of just handling all of that going on and finding the open man, and Mateer does the rest for a touchdown. But like,
Yeah.
not every quarterback makes that play. And again, it's not an outstanding play, but
A lot of times though, just making those plays and doing a little like his ability to climb the pocket
yeah,
and sort of keep his eyes downfield and look for those options after the play developed a little longer than maybe it was designed to develop, right? His
yeah,
ability to climb the pocket and move around a little bit. There were times where he was climbing and rolling out to the left. And I want to say it was on one of his touchdown passes into the flat that one of the running backs took. He climbs, he steps up in the pocket, climbs the pocket, rolls out to the left, and the running back is wide open. It's his
yeah,
ability, his pocket presence is what really stood out to me. I saw him climb the pocket, move around, showed a lot of mobility. There was a lot of things in regard to his ability to not only maneuver in the pocket, but know how a play was going to unfold as he did that I think led to a lot of open options for him downfield later in plays, right?
yep,
But you're 100% right. His ability to go through reads and do all of that, especially in week one, right, of a new offense, all of these things.
yeah,
If this is the starting point, if this is his baseline, obviously there's going to be, Wyoming isn't a bad team, or at least we didn't think they were. I don't ever want to overreact to week one. Who knows? Maybe
I have a hard
they're
time believing Wyoming's defense is just going to suck this whole year because
right.
it
Like they
doesn't
they
do that.
should turn it around. It seemed
Yeah,
like they had a pretty good roster in place, and who knows? Maybe this is just a one-off for both sides. But right now you can't ignore what ASU put on tape, and they looked awesome. So obviously, there's going to be
Yeah.
taller tasks ahead for this offense and for this defense. Which I mean, you and I talked all offseason about
Yep.
how we thought this defense would surprise people. We thought the continuity um, rolling over would bode well for them, and they were kind of the Big 12, one of the Big 12's secrets a little bit, right? Was that defensive
Yes.
unit. I think this not only this reinforced that, right? This kind of validated what you and I were talking about all offseason. Is this defense is
Yes.
going to be
Yes.
good. This is a good defense. Um, the offense will have taller tasks, obviously, but if this is the baseline and they're only going to get more comfortable in this system and learn how to run this more effectively with time, I don't know who they won't be able to keep up with in the Big 12. Again, week one, let's not overreact, but I I don't
It's
know, man.
it's
They
tough
look
not to
good.
overreact. It's tough not to overreact after what we saw on Saturday night.
Right. And I don't think
Like,
based on that product, if that's the starting point, I don't think it's far fetched to say that they can at the very least hang with the best of the Big 12 if that's the product that they're rolling out every week,
yeah.
you
Well, and
know?
the other thing
So
is, like, Wyoming is not the worst defense that you will play this year.
no.
Like, now they may be the worst offense. I concede that. I'm not, but we might have said that going into the game anyway. Like, so that's, and no one's expecting ASU to just shut out its opponents, like, and score 2 defensive touchdowns. But like, oh yeah. So like, if you look at some of the, I mean, U of A, 39 points. There's no, like, if we were sitting here and ASU had beat, let's say they just, ASU played New Mexico instead. ASU beat New Mexico 61-39. We wouldn't be this confident. Now, granted, U
No.
of A, they saw, they like, I don't blame a U of A fan for being confident based on what they showed last year and everything, and T Mac, who's outstanding. But
Yeah, 300 receiving yards like
insane.
he
He's the next,
they might have him to thank for 1-0. Like that he carried them.
but that's the thing. That's the thing. That's kind of my point. Like U of A did not put together a fantastic performance. Like there's no, like, if you're a U of A fan watching that, in the back of your head, like, oh damn, we gave up 40 points to New Mexico. Like,
Yeah, that is
it's
that is
not
not
supposed to. Yeah,
that is not going to be an effective defense if that's what they're rolling out. I think what instills a lot of confidence for me in regards to ASU is it wasn't a game breaking. Obviously, Kyson Brown had a big day, but it wasn't a game breaking performance in the
right,
realm of McMillan that it took to blow this team out. It was just a pretty well an evenly distributed attack across the board,
right.
right? It
That's
wasn't one guy, it was the whole stable of guys, right? So
yep,
I mean, and now you add Rayleigh Brown into the fold, who is by all accounts a very dynamic playmaker at different positions
yep,
across the field on offense. I don't know. The more comfortable they
yep,
get and the more healthy they get, right? They're
yeah.
just hopefully there's no regression. Hopefully they continue to build on this, and if they do, I don't know. I think our 5 and 6 wins might be a little low.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like just based, okay, specifically based off the opener. Like if you had just told someone, like, hey, this, go watch this ASU team. You have no idea about their past. You have no idea about anything, any of the context. You just watch them play Wyoming. You would probably think like, oh, this team will win 8 games at least. Now, granted, that's not like, I'm not saying that, but I mean, now all of a sudden, if you told me ASU is going to go 8-4 this year, I'd be like, okay, yeah. I mean, based on what I saw on Saturday
Yeah,
night, like that was a
and
performance of an 8-4 ish team. And think about some of the other openers of ASU football. The last 2 seasons got destroyed by Fresno State, and that's not an opener, but it's against another Mountain West team.
Right.
And then you beat 2 years ago, you beat NAU, you kill
And
them,
I
but then
mean, Fresno State might be the best team in the Mountain West this
yeah,
year, right?
yeah, true. And
That
then
that they looked really good against Michigan.
yeah, that's true. But like, I guess my point is like beating a group of 5 team so badly is not something you have done in a few years.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I think the last because you beat I think the 2021 team beat UNLV badly, but I think that like par for the course for the 2021 team, they had like 12 penalties. So it was
Right.
like okay, cool, we're running for 6 yards a carry against UNLV, but like the penalties were a huge foreshadowing sign, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened that season. Even a lot
Right.
of even the end of the Todd Graham era, they weren't killing teams. Remember that game in college? It was like Sacramento State or Cal Poly, one of those two.
Oh, it was the Cal Poly game.
21 in the third quarter, and you're like, oh my gosh, we might lose. They didn't lose, but like it wasn't the games against San Diego State. Now, granted, those San Diego State teams were better than this Wyoming team. I get it, but like it's been a while. It's been like since our freshman year of college. It's been since like the 2013-14 ASU teams that they've just destroyed an opponent like this.
Yeah,
It's
I in my time covering and following the team extremely closely,
Mhm.
which admittedly wasn't really until I got to ASU.
Yeah,
So 2013, 14, that range. I mean, that's 10 years, and I don't think I've seen an opening game as crisp and as
yeah,
promising as this opening game, right?
yeah.
And this wasn't even against an NAU. Like,
No,
I
yeah,
remember what was it, 2015 or 16? They opened with NAU, and that game was 7-0 at half. Like,
I think was
you
that the
know,
Case Cookus game? I remember Case Cookus.
probably a Case Cookus game, but and I mean, the Cal Poly game. You go down the list.
Yep.
The kickoff the week 0 game in Houston when Christian Kirk
Oh,
and Kyler Murray torched them.
that
Um,
one's a little different, but I get your point. Yeah,
Miles Garrett, but I mean, you just go down the list. Yeah, obviously that's a team with expectations playing another solid
yeah,
team. When you're playing on week 0, that's you're held to a different standard. But um, I mean, just going down the line, this is easily the most promising and the most enticing week
yes,
1 game that I've seen. It's instilled the most excitement, and I don't know, man. I think everybody's expectations. You and I thought this going in that everybody was a little too low on this team. Neither of us were projecting anything special, but people projecting that this would be the worst team in the Big 12. I think
oh, that's
we're
yeah,
we're a little off, and we said that from the beginning. But also, none of these national reporters we admitted too. We don't think a lot of these national reporters were really paying close attention, right?
no,
Which I mean, we had the benefit of being able to,
yeah,
and
and I can't
we kind
blame.
of
I'm
saw
not
this
gonna
coming.
blame them. Yeah,
Not to the
yeah,
degree that it happened, but we
right.
thought they would be a little better. And now, I mean, you see a lot of overcorrection. Maybe the line for the Mississippi State game has already moved to from 2.5 to 6.5.
Yeah, but
ASU favored.
that's the sharp money coming in. Like,
Right. But
yeah,
that's what I'm saying is people
yeah,
are like, oh, I think people are starting to realize like it's not just the fact that they won that game, it's the way in which they won it and who they beat, I
yes,
think, that is
yes,
making this
yes,
narrative change the way that it is. Right.
yes,
So,
yes, 100%. Um, a few more things to touch over on the box score. Really good to see both Clayton Smith and Elijah O'Neal finish with a sack. You love to see that. Those are going to be big players this year. Jake Smith back on the field, 3 catches, 47 yards, made it look easy. Jordan Tyson, exactly what was anticipated. To Carlos Brooks, smooth as ever. Cam Scadaboo, you know, Levitt looked good. Jason Brown came in and looked great late in the fourth quarter. And then an interesting person got a carry. Offensive lineman Keona Pete.
I
Interesting.
wonder
Very
why.
interesting. That I love that so much. That Dilly, like,
Yeah,
okay,
that's cool.
because his dad, Koa Pete's dad, I forget his name, was in the stands, and like we're not gonna do a whole basketball thing here, but like it feels way more likely than the average basketball fan would think that Koa Pete will end up at ASU.
Well, I mean, Koa Pete was at the game. He
Yes,
was on his
no, yeah,
official
exactly.
visit.
He was at the game, and another thing is like ASU has had some games, whether it be I don't know much is I don't think it's much basketball recruits that are there, but definitely football, where they've had high profile recruits on campus for a game, and ASU just completely craps the bed. Did
Oh
not
yeah.
like the absolute opposite happened this time.
No, anytime you can give an O lineman a carry with
strategically.
recruits, yeah, with
Yeah.
recruits on campus, you know that game went exactly how you needed
No,
it to go.
yeah. And another thing that I was a little nervous about. I mean, I was nervous about the game already, just because like Wyoming theoretically was a team that could beat us. I was worried about the crowd. I didn't know what the crowd would be like. Crowd was pretty dang good. I think it was like 48K that showed up. Great student section attendance, and you get what like 90% of the stadium, 93 full for a game against Wyoming, coming off of ASU having 2 consecutive 3-9 seasons. Like you'll take that, you know.
Oh, for sure. And I think it shows. I think it's just a testament to the work that not only Kenny Dillingham but Graham Rossini has already
Oh yeah,
done in his short tenure. I mean, his early returns, his early reviews have been like nothing but excellent, and
yep,
all the effort he's putting in to make this accessible, to build it up the
yeah,
way that he has, and all of the unique ways he's trying to grow the reach of not only ASU but ASU athletics, which I think is a huge distinction.
yeah,
Athletics I've always felt secondary to this university, and it doesn't really feel that way anymore. It feels like athletics can be the driving part of the driving force of the university's appeal, and that kind of feels like Rossini's approach, at least in the early going. And he seems extremely accessible too. That's what I've noticed. But anyway, I think
yeah,
the turnout and the turnout that's expected for Mississippi State are both products of what we've seen him do in his short tenure so far as athletic director.
yeah. No, good ideas with the lowering parking costs, lowering water costs. And there's NIL beer now at the stadium, which I took advantage of a little that during the
Oh, there you
game.
go.
And yeah, no, you said it with the Mississippi State like atmosphere. It's gonna be sold out for sure, and it's gonna be a party.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll be at that one. I got tickets
yeah,
to that one.
and the other thing is like even though Mississippi State for us as fans, like people who follow this sport, like Mississippi State is not some juggernaut program coming in. They obviously could beat ASU. Okay, I'm not saying that, but like they're not like regarded as like this powerhouse. But to your average Joe fan, they see it's an SEC team that's not Vanderbilt.
Right.
Like that's a big deal. So I'm excited about that. You'll have a good chunk of Mississippi State fans in the house. Should be a good game. And yeah,
Not to mention, I mean, ASU is trying to beat its first SEC team, right?
which is I
Like
haven't
that's
looked into all the ones that they've played. Clearly ASU just hasn't played that many SEC teams in its history.
right to have
Like
never
there's just
beaten one,
yeah.
100%. But I mean, it's still a cool angle that the
Oh, for
university
sure.
is pursuing
And
to
it,
try to
yeah,
get people excited.
and it's fantastic for Dillingham. You can say, "Hey, we have the opportunity to do something that no other ASU team has ever done."
Right, and you bring up a good point. Is like how big is the sample size? How often are you playing SEC teams? But again, to your other point, the average fan will see
Yep,
SEC, and that's kind
yep,
of the crown jewel of college football. So they won't necessarily dig a
yeah,
little deeper and see that it was Mississippi State. They'll just take the SEC win.
yep, absolutely. So that'll be okay. So I'm going to share some interesting stats on the screen while we're talking about Mississippi State. Let's get a score prediction from you and me as well.
Okay. I love the defense. I think what the defense showed against Wyoming was incredibly sustainable. Maybe not the touchdowns,
Yeah.
but the forcing the turnovers, the getting after the quarterback, the pursuit by the linebackers. I think you mentioned that, especially when opposing offenses are throwing to their running backs or their tight ends. I think that's all extremely sustainable and will carry over from game to game. The linebackers are a big part of that. I think Mississippi State is good for 10 points. I'm going to say ASU scores 27. Or maybe did I say
27-10.
27 last week?
I think he's
I
at
may have.
27-13. Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Give me 31-10. I'm sticking with the
Wow.
blowouts.
Okay. Well, I mean, the fact that the line has jumped up all the way to 6.5, again, it doesn't portend anything that's actually going to happen on the field, but I think it is noteworthy. This is an air raid system that is run by Jeff Levy and the Bulldogs. It is his second game as head coach, and I don't think Brian Ward, who played or coached at Wazoo and has been around, West Coast football for a bit, is going to be like, it's like, oh my gosh, we're playing the air raid. I don't know how to defend. Like I think he'll know what to
Right.
do. So I still have Mississippi State's offense being more effective than you. I have ASU winning this game 31-20.
Okay.
So either
That's
way
good.
would be great.
10 might be low. Let me adjust this. Let me get 31-17.
31-17. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I like that. So now I have an interesting graphic here from Parker Fleming. He does a lot of football data science on Twitter. Very interesting follow at Stats of War. He's a TCU guy. Let me put the tweet on the screen here. Don't have too much time left. Okay. So it's called, I don't know if you can see it, Colton. So it's net success rate of all teams. Did we really get beat that bad? Net success rates in week 1. Let's take a look at this list. Just the normal teams up there. Texas destroys Colorado State 52-0. Alabama destroys Western Kentucky. Oklahoma destroys Temple, and then ASU destroys Wyoming. And so this graphic is telling us that our eyes were not misled watching this game. ASU did beat Wyoming that badly, and they're within some pretty good competition up here. Granted, look, like Pitt's up here, Maryland beat UConn. So again, it's not a comprehensive ranking, but that's a pretty good spot to be in.
Right. And
And it does.
how many Mountain West schools other than Colorado State and Wyoming are ranked up there, right? The schools
Yeah,
that,
let's see.
Pitt and you're looking at Boise
Yeah, there
State,
would be
Georgia
MAC
Southern,
teams.
right? Right,
The
exactly.
next Mountain West, well, the next Mountain West team is Boise, but they won, so that doesn't count.
Or I guess
UNLV, yeah,
the Florida one there, that was brutal, but
that was a crazy game. But look, I mean, U of A, like it's kind of what we're talking about with U of A. Like they were clearly the better team against New Mexico, but not the way ASU was, So like, that's just a really just a really impressive game and a lot of. I'll share this tab. Kelly
I was looking for
Ford
Mississippi State. I couldn't see it.
in which
I don't
one?
think they were on there on that chart.
Oh no they weren't. So that the Fleming guy, he only did it for FBS versus FBS teams. So that's why
Oh, okay.
ASU was so high. But that proves our point. Like the only FBS versus FBS blowouts that were higher than ASU, at least according to his stats, were Texas beating Colorado State and Alabama beating Western Kentucky. And it's like,
Right. I mean, ASU had the third best win of the week in the entire country.
yeah, exactly.
Which is
And then you
crazy.
look at Kelly Ford, K Ford ratings, college football power rankings, and resume rankings. Simple enough. This is from last night after the Boston College Florida State game, and it looks pretty much what you'd expect. You have Georgia at number 1, Alabama 2, Texas 3, Ohio State, Penn State. Like, okay, everything we thought. Oregon drops down a little bit, understandably. You got Arizona 33. It makes sense. ASU 47. Okay, like they were way lower in this to start, and you have a lot of Big 12 teams squarely behind them as well. So again, if ASU, what I will say is like ASU getting to 6-6 just feels so much like they just have their what they showed in that game against Wyoming is they just have a lot more wiggle room in a game to game basis than people expect. And all of a sudden, that game at Texas Tech looks a lot more winnable after Texas Tech almost lost to Abilene Christian, I believe. So,
Definitely. And yeah, it's been weird to see the FPI, ESPN's FPI adjust to all of
yeah,
ASU's games, right? Like all of
it's
these, even the Utah game, I think jumped from like 10% to now they have a 40% chance to
yeah.
win, which might be a little absurd, but I mean that'll correct itself. Yeah, I'm looking right now,
No, it gives us.
58.3%
I saw
for
that
Utah.
we now have positive, on ESPN, like positive percentages in 6 games. So there you go. Doesn't prove anything, but it's a good start. So Colton, thanks for hopping on. This was a fantastic game and a good show, and yeah,
Of course, man. Look forward to looking at next week's game too.
for sure. All right. Well, please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. Please follow the College Huddle. And as always, go Devils. 1-0, baby.